Frankie now has full hydraulic steering. In this video, we're going to break it down into 3 sections. Why did we go full hydraulic steering? The parts and setup for the full hydraulic steering. And then finally, we're going to do a walk around and see how everything fits and looks on Frankie. This is the conventional steering setup that we had on Frankie. Technically, there's nothing wrong with this setup. We really like it. But the problem we were having is that we weren't getting enough of a turning angle to get in and out of driveways or parking spots. We were having to do 2 or 3 point turns to get in and out of parking spots. After researching on the internet on how to get more turning radius out of the axle, it came to my attention that the problem was the pitman arm, and it shows that the pitman arm wasn't long enough. And let me show you what I mean when I say it's not long enough. Now this is the steering box and pitman arm that was in Frankie. And when I tell you it wasn't long enough, I'm not referring about its length from top to bottom. I'm referring to its length from front to back. So the pitman arm needs to be longer in this direction so as you will get more throw out of the pitman arm whenever you turn the wheel left to right. And that longer throw will give you more angle in your steering knuckles, so you can make much tighter turns. I searched to try to find a longer pitman arm, but I could not find one. I'm also aware that some people will fabricate their own longer pitman arm, but my son was really curious about hydraulic steering, so we knew that going full hydraulic steering would give us the full turning radius that we needed. So we ended up going with a 10-inch hydraulic cylinder. The steering pitman arm we had on there only gave us 7 inches of throw from left to right. So going from that 7 inches to 10 inches, it doesn't seem like very much, but it actually is. It's given us a lot more of a turning radius. So that's why we did it. That's why we went full hydraulic steering. Some people could live with the turning situation the way it was, but we wanted more. We wanted to be able to turn the vehicle in any situation, any parking lot, especially my son who's actually driving this truck to college and he's having to get on and off campus. He was really nervous about getting stuck in a situation where he couldn't get out because, as you know, all these campuses are small and everyone is driving small vehicles, a lot of pedestrians, so he wanted something that would handle much better than the way it was. Now you know why we did it. Let me show you how we did it. So if you get online and you Google full hydraulic steering, this picture is going to be one of the hundreds of pictures that pop up, and this is a good illustration of how the flow travels through the system. It'll start at your reservoir. It'll feed down to your power steering pump. From the power steering pump over to your orbital valve or steering control valve. When you turn the wheel left to right, the fluid will travel back and forth through the hydraulic cylinder, back to the orbital valve. The return will go through the cooler, and then from there it will return back to your reservoir and the flow will start all over again. This is PSC's newest reservoir. If you go to purchase one, this is probably what it's going to look like. It's not going to look like the one that I have because mine is very old. This is my old power steering pump. We did put a new power steering pump on the truck. I'm just showing you this so you can see the tank that's on the back side of the power steering pump. You take out 3 bolts and that pump will come off, and then let's see what it looks like. This is the tank that comes off the back side of it. This is the new one. As you can see, it's in much better condition. It's replaced with this. This is from PSC. As you see, it has a AN10 fitting on the top. That way you can feed your system with all AN lines. Here is your steering control valve or orbital valve, whatever you want to call it. Here's the shaft that bolts to it so you can actually steer left to right. And then this is a diagram from Barnes four-wheel drive. That's where I purchased the bracket that I welded to the axle to mount the 10-inch cylinder. It's not made for a 10-inch cylinder, but I made it work. That's what we do. Here is the cooler kit that I purchased off of eBay. It came with the fan. It does have 8 and 10 fittings on the inlet and the outlet. I think that's pretty cool. It makes for a nice leak-free connection. Let's run through the system and follow the path of flow and the parts that I've used. So this is PSC reservoir. This is an old reservoir. I bought this like 15 years ago. Oh shoot, even more than that, probably 18 years ago. It does have a filter inside of it. They have a new style that you can purchase now. So from the PSC reservoir, it goes down to our power steering pump. From the power steering pump, that blue hose goes over to our orbital valve or steering control valve. You can see that I welded the bracket straight to the frame. Some of you will disapprove, but it's okay. The steering shaft is just the factory steering shaft. So from my power steering pump to the orbital valve is the blue line. There's 2 more blue lines coming out of the orbital valve going over to the hydraulic cylinder. The reason these lines are blue is because they are high temp lines. I was told that by the hydraulic hose shop that built these hoses. So reservoir to power steering pump to orbital valve to hydraulic cylinder, which is under the truck. And you see that this line here from the orbital valve goes to the cooler that we have mounted in front of our radiator. Out of that cooler, that is some tape that we placed on here to help with chafing. It's some really thick duct tape. Back to the reservoir, and the flow starts all over again. Also, with a double-ended hydraulic steering setup like we have, we don't really need this tie rod, but I have it and I can make it fit, so therefore we're gonna leave it. I think it's a little bit of extra insurance to help hold these tires together. I think it's easier to set the alignment like that also, because I can turn on that center tie rod and set my toe in, toe out, and then I can use the smaller control arms that come off at each end of the hydraulic cylinder and just match those to match the single tie rod that runs the entire length of the truck. Here's a better shot of the steering shaft coming down into the orbital valve or steering control valve, whatever you would like to call it. It looks like the hoses are close to touching, but they're actually not. We're going to keep a close eye on it. I wanted to put a bungee cord on here to hold it up a little bit, but my son said that's cheesy, so we'll keep an eye on it and check for chafing, and it's just more that we have to watch for.